Willie, how rich is it? I can't. There are few words that could adequately describe how hilarious it is that Donald Trump is going to Davos. It is the biggest slap in the face to every single person that voted for him, thinking that he was going to fight for the little man and fight against these international organizations and fight against the accumulation of wealth. He's going to Davos. He's fired Steve Bannon, and now he thinks that he needs to act out of love, just like Jeb Bush a year and a half later.
Well, first of all, Joe, I wasn't here yesterday, so roll Tide.
There you go.
Get that going.
Yeah,
roll Tide.
Get that out of the way.
Roll Tide.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, Davos is the very symbol of globalism that Steve Bannon and Breitbart and the president last year was railing against and fighting against. It was the genesis of his campaign. It was the ethos of his campaign. We're going to be inward looking. So obviously a trip to Davos runs against everything he stood for. But that's more symbolic, I think, than what he said yesterday in that open meeting, which was an hour and a half, 45 minutes of which were broadcast on national television. As someone in the press, I'll take it. I like that transparency. It was like C-SPAN with a presidential meeting.
More.
But what he said was what he thought some people in the room wanted to hear, which is what he does. He said, well, yeah, pathway to citizenship. We're going to have a big, beautiful deal. Don't worry. We're going to make it all happen. Forget everything I've been saying for the last 2 years. It's who's in front of them. It's who's in the room. It's what they want to hear. That's what he does.
And Mika, the reason that he did this was obvious. He wanted to disprove Michael Wolff's book. He wanted to prove that he was in complete control of his mental facilities. And actually, what he did was show that he wasn't. He couldn't keep up with where he was. He would amble over and say what Democrats wanted to hear. Yes, I'm with you. I'm with you, and we should do this out of love. And then Kevin McCarthy would, sort of figuratively grab him by the shoulder and say, he'd go, Grandpa, come on over here. Let's come on, Paw, sit down here. Don't hurt yourself. This is what you really believe. And then Paw would say, okay, this is what I really believe. But Grandpa kept kind of wandering back and forth. And he had to be reminded time and time again by Republicans what he believed. Yeah. So the very thing he was trying to prove, he disproves.
Yeah.
He has no idea about the issues and has no positions on the issues that actually drive his base the most.
And they let him do that. And they didn't try and stop him. So good. Okay. Reporters were in the room as the president promised to sign a bill to extend the DACA program if Congress is able to reach an agreement. Both Democrats and Republicans tested the president on what has been his core issues, and Trump said he would accept their recommendations.
What about a clean DACA bill now?
I have no problem. I think that's basically what Dick is saying. We're going to come out with DACA. We're going to do DACA, and then we can start immediately on the phase 2, which would be comprehensive.
Would you be agreeable to that?
Yeah, I would like to. But I think we have to do DACA first.
Mr. President, you need to be clear, though. I think what Senator Feinstein's asking here, when we talk about just DACA, we don't want to be back here 2 years later. You have to have security, as the Secretary would tell you.
But I think that's what she's saying.
I think she's saying something different.
What do you think I'm saying?
I'm thinking you're saying DACA without security.
Is there any agreement without the wall?
No, there wouldn't be. You can never fix the situation without additional wall, and we have to fix existing wall that we already have.
So you would not support what Senator Feinstein asked you, which would be a clean DACA bill that doesn't...
No, I think a clean DACA bill, to me, is a DACA bill where we take care of the 800,000 people. To me, a clean bill is a bill of DACA. We take care of them, and we also take care of security. That's very important.
I would vote for a path to citizenship, which isn't very easy for me, but I would do it just as an effort. But there's certain things that we got to guarantee that we're going to do.
That's going to be brought up. I really believe that will be brought up as part of what we're talking about at some point. It's an incentive for people to do a good job. If you want to know the truth, that whole path is an incentive for people. It would be an incentive for people to work hard, do a good job. So, that could very well be brought up to pass. If we do this properly, DACA, you're not so far away from comprehensive immigration reform. And if you want to take it that further step, I'll take the heat. I don't care. I'll take all the heat you want to give me. And I'll take the heat off both the Democrats and the Republicans. My whole life has been heat. I like heat in a certain way.
It seems to me not much has actually changed here in terms of your positions.
No, I think it's changed. I think my positions are going to be what the people in this room come up with. I am very much reliant on the people in this room. I know most of the people on both sides. I have a lot of respect for the people on both sides. And what I approve is going to be very much reliant on what the people in this room come to me with. I have great confidence in the people. If they come to me with things that I'm not in love with, I'm going to do it because I respect them.
Whoa. Oh, my God.
So Casey Hunt, you're on Capitol Hill. First of all, I'm going to ask you in a second about how many Republicans' brains exploded spontaneously yesterday after hearing this. But, so the president now supports, and I would say the majority of Americans, if this ends up being his position, will go along with him and be glad that he is moderating and actually listening to other people other than the voices in his head and Steve Bannon. But he supports a clean DACA bill, a path to citizenship, and comprehensive immigration reform, and has said, quote, I will take the heat from that. Now, you never know what's going to happen with Donald Trump. Tomorrow, maybe he goes back into the rabbit hole, and the same Republicans that misled him on health care will mislead him again on immigration, and they'll say, no, you have to be this hard right, you have to listen to your base. Trump said last night, as I made very clear today, our country needs all the security wall, the southern border, which must be part of any DACA approval. So he goes back. He goes back to the border wall. But if he's willing to trade DACA, and if he's willing to trade comprehensive immigration reform and even a pathway to citizenship for that wall, that would be a pretty massive immigration bill. That, by the way, would offend an awful lot of people, a lot of conservatives on the right.
It would, Joe, but I just don't, from watching that meeting and then reading that tweet, I don't see how we have any more clarity this morning than we did yesterday morning about where the president stands on immigration or any of those issues, or even whether he really understands the contours of the debate at hand. I mean, after that meeting was sort of airing in this very unusual public way, I ran into Mark Meadows from North Carolina, who runs the Freedom Caucus, in the hallways of the Capitol, and we asked him about this two-step process that the president seemed to be proposing: do DACA now, then do comprehensive reform, and I'll take the heat. And Meadows was essentially like, under no circumstances is that an acceptable thing for us to do. The display that I think the president was trying to make was, you alluded to it at the top of the show, to show he's in control and that he understands and is pulling the strings and making things happen. But I think what you saw was, in many ways, a display that showed a basic lack of understanding of the political pressure points for both parties, for his own party, but also for Democrats. Like, in trying to give everybody what he thought they wanted, he just really confused the issue and made it a lot harder, I think.
But, Mika, so let's back up. Let's say the president knew exactly what he was doing yesterday. Let's say that this is part of a grand plan that he has never had before, but he has now. If what that president was saying was he was going to work with everybody in the room on comprehensive immigration reform, that would be the guy that a lot of people voted for. The guy that said and promised, I'm going to bring everybody to a big room and we're going to strike a deal. So we're not overly negative, since I've already called him Grandpa twice,
Papa.
since we're not overly negative about Papa, since we're not overly negative about, so we won't be. If he did this, if he sat there and worked with everybody from Kevin McCarthy to Dianne Feinstein on comprehensive immigration reform, that actually would be a fulfillment of how he promised to govern, working with people, getting deals done. So let's not all be too cynical. I'm sure he will blow it up later this afternoon, but we felt the need to say that.
I disagree.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You'd have to do some mental gymnastics to really get there. I mean, Sam Stein, from the reporting of many, I'll leave my own opinions out of this, from the reporting of many on this president's personality, it just appears he was trying to prove he was fit to lead, and he proved exactly the opposite.
It's funny, Joe's right, and I agree with Joe in theory that Trump pitched himself as a person who could bring all sides together, a deal maker, and so on, except on one topic, and that was immigration.
From the beginning.
Immigration was the defining topic, where he was, and his base were adamantly against anything that remotely resembled the DACA compromise. I think it's important to also step back, because what they did yesterday was not a negotiation in any traditional sense of the way these things work legislatively. What they did was they put on a show meant to look like a negotiation.
The president set up a show to show he was fit.
There was no give or take about what would be in a bill and what type of security measures you would have and what year these types of DACA protections would come in over time and who would be allowed to receive them. Those are the nitty-gritty elements of negotiations that allow a bill to become a law. What we saw yesterday was a display, a lovely display, I enjoyed it much as Willie did, to show that they were having a conversation and to a certain degree to show that the president was there and was competent. But what was most remarkable, and I'll leave it here, is when he said, my position is what the people in this room come up with.
That's kind of...
And that, to me, is just a remarkable admission from a president to say, I don't actually have a position on one of the most important domestic legislative items in front of me. You tell me what I should sign.
Not even a conviction, Will.
Jonathan, this isn't the first time that the president, in the eyes of his supporters, has showed squishiness on DACA. He said, we've got to do something with a lot of heart. We've got to take care of these people. That was almost a year ago in February. He said that. But as you watch the congressmen and the senators in that room, you saw Kevin McCarthy have to jump in to sort of correct the president. If there were a thought bubble over Dick Durbin's head sitting next to President Trump, I would have loved to have seen it. He said, when he came out of the meeting, he said, my head was spinning with all the things I heard there. I don't know where the president stands. I don't know where this stands. I guess to Joe's point, the question is, what's the follow-on today? What does President Trump really believe? Does he hear all this press coverage that it was confusing and say, no, actually, I'm a hardliner again on DACA, I'm a hardliner on immigration?
Well, I think we saw a little bit of that last night with his tweet, sort of clarifying, like, hey, no deal's happening without a wall. Like, he sort of went back to that last night. I think it's important also to take just a half step back and realize just how unusual this is. A White House meeting like this, usually the press pool comes in, 13 to 15 journalists, and we see a spray, which means the top of it. Like, first 90 seconds, 3 or 4 minutes, and it's usually a few pleasantries, and then we're out the door. And to be in there for all 55 minutes is very striking, and I think there's no question that part of that was a pushback against all the chatter from the book about his mental capacity to lead, but also even the story from the day before about the executive time, the idea that Trump needed these unstructured time to focus on Twitter and television, and therefore wasn't engaged with the actual policy making. But yet, I think what we saw there was in particular, when he had to be, as you said, sort of steered back to what his previous position was, he again sort of demonstrated sort of a lack of really firm understanding of any sort of policy details, and in this case, his own position. And I agree, though certainly Trump has waffled on a few things, and I think most people believe his base would stay with him on some compromises. Immigration may be the one where it doesn't. We heard about Mark Meadows and even others like who have been fiercely in Trump's corner. Like Ann Coulter tweeted something like, if he makes a deal here, one-term president. Like, this is the one thing that I think that his base won't compromise on, and I think the president, who is so usually in tune with what he thinks his base wants, won't end up going there.
Joe, I can't think of any other reason he held this meeting but to put on a show and to try and respond to the visceral attacks that he was experiencing over the past 24 hours. Nothing more.
Well, that could be part of it. He also is feeling the pressure from Bob Mueller. He's going to have to sit down with Bob Mueller. He had Steve Bannon running around before, even when he was in the White House, concerned about the 25th Amendment. He's got to be concerned about impeachment if Democrats take over. He's got to be concerned about his low approval ratings, about the Republican Party's low approval ratings. And I'm not suggesting that Donald Trump has changed. I am only saying Let me say the word if again as my massive size of the Empire State Building caveat. If he were to follow through on what appeared to be his instincts yesterday, opening it up, having Democrats and Republicans sort through the nuances of immigration and bringing them together on a big immigration bill, that would be a reset. And when it comes to immigration, well, first of all, I get it really quickly. Ann Coulter says Donald Trump would be a one-term president. No, actually, he would not. I don't think this bill or any bill is going to determine that. It's much bigger than that. Steve Bannon is a great example. A guy a month or 2 months ago, 3 months ago, one of the most feared people in Washington, D.C. Steve Bannon and Donald Trump sort of squared off. Now Steve Bannon's even been driven from Breitbart. I'm not saying Bannon won't come back. I'm saying, though, it's all about Donald Trump in Washington, D.C. with conservatives. It's all about Donald Trump from the people who voted for him. So, yeah, he could strike a deal, and they, of course, will figure out, Jeremy Peters, how to make it sound like he got the best of Democrats and how stupid the Democrats were for falling into Donald Trump's trap. He got the wall. It was a fascinating display, and Trump's instinct has been, in the past, to strike deals on immigration. He's quietly talked about it. He's wanted to do the DACA deal before. That's, again, we're getting back to the Donald Trump from Manhattan and not the Donald Trump that turned into a racist, bigoted, xenophobic populist. So it's, I don't know, it was an interesting display yesterday. He showed a peek yesterday of what he promised people he would be outside of the immigration issue, which is I bring him in, I'll make a deal, we'll get this country working again.
And I think, Joe, you have to separate out a DACA fix from the broader immigration debate and the wall and border security and visas and legal immigration and reducing that. And I think that's, if there is something that the base can see that looks like even just a digital wall, more border security enhancement with troops or border patrol agents down there, that's probably sufficient. So DACA aside, because so many people want to fix that, I think probably Trump doesn't have as big of a problem with the base. But he said something really remarkable yesterday in that conversation, and that was, I don't think that this is going to be that complicated. I mean, really? Tell that to the Republican Party, which has tried time and time again to come up with some type of comprehensive immigration reform fix and failed, and especially tell that to the Republicans who were around in 2006 when they tried to tackle this issue, and then, because of immigration and a combination of other factors, lost the House, the Senate, and Democrats were able to claim a majority of the governorships. I mean, this has just always been a third rail for the Republican Party, and I don't see how a president who was elected on this issue in large part because it was so galvanizing for his supporters can think that this is not complicated.
Yeah, it is complicated. He said the same thing about health care reform, and Jeremy's exactly right. George W. Bush and the Democratic leadership were all together on this, and they were moving towards a comprehensive immigration bill, and the people rose up and stopped it dead in its tracks. But if there is a DACA deal in exchange for a wall, and if they move towards a comprehensive immigration reform that combines tough border security with a path to, say, legalization and not citizenship, because citizenship is a non-starter for most Republicans.
Exactly right.
Then there could be a deal, but again, yesterday was one day. We'll see. We'll see how he does in Davos.
We'll see.
Excuse me.
We'll see what today brings.